Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11, taking a look at the Monday NBA slate tonight, and got a decent-sized slate, and you're also looking at some good-sized tournaments over on DK. You got the 400K Sharpshooter Championship, 100K to first, so make sure get some entries into that bad boy. But looking at tonight's slate, you're looking at a lot of decent high-total games. Not a lot of totals out this morning, but we're taking a look at Boston, LA, Sacramento, Portland being kind of the two top ones at the end of the night there. Dallas, Denver, not too shabby. Phoenix, Minnesota is the big one. And also OKC, Toronto is a pretty competitive game, but Thunder will slow some pace in that one going up against Toronto on the road. There are some other intriguing games. You got Miami against Brooklyn in an easy matchup for Miami. Some nice value plays there going up against a weak Brooklyn defense. Atlanta, Chicago, one that's kind of been intriguing in the past. That one's going to be an interesting one to break down just due to, well, the Bulls not really playing well. Paul Millsap, questionable for tonight's game, but kind of leaning towards playing. Atlanta, not expecting to rest guys, but that's still something to keep an eye on, as we can't trust any sort of news that comes out of the NBA these days, especially down the stretch here. San Antonio, Memphis, it's another one that's just kind of going to be a little bit ugly. Outside of LaMarcus Aldridge, not really targeting much out of that one. But overall, I mean, it's still a lot of options. You're kind of looking at a pretty normal slate tonight, I guess you could say, which is something that isn't usually the case coming down here towards the end of the season. Looking at point guards tonight, and, well, Drew Holiday, questionable for tonight's game against the Knicks, and he's one that's kind of one to really keep an eye on. He missed the last two games with a sore toe. Doesn't expect to be serious, but just seems to be something that's going to either linger or as well just kind of keep him out altogether. And if that's the case, you're also going to see a lot of Tony Douglas and a lot of Tim Frazier there. So they will both be excellent value plays against the Knicks backcourt that's been not a tough one to really attack this season. So keep an eye on that one. Deron Williams, he's another one. Missed last night's game. Questionable for tonight's game. I think you're kind of leaning more closer to doubtful. J.J. Barea, Devin Harris, Raymond Felton, those guys have picked up extra minutes and been pretty solid producers. Barea has been kind of the cheaper option at point guard. You have Felton over there at shooting guard. But overall, I mean, Barea delivery of his kid. But Felton, on the other hand, definitely going to get a little bit more run, 35-38 over the last two games, back-to-back 30 fantasy point games against Golden State and Sacramento. Going to have all three of those guys are going to have a pretty fantasy-friendly matchup against Denver tonight, who struggle defensively. So that's something to keep an eye on as that news shifts out. Outside of that, you're not looking at too much injury news at point guard. Looking up top, though, you got OKC facing off against Toronto. That means Westbrook, your fantasy points per minute leader on the slate. You're looking at him being a nice GPP option still because he's a bit overpriced in comparison to what the other point guards are doing. Looking at Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, those guys. So, of course, you remember that Boston Celtics game that went back with the Clippers I believe it was 2 months ago or so. Went overtime, and it was just a battle between the 2 point guards there. Also, Jordan got in the action. But look for him tonight to do his usual thing in a pretty high-scoring, pretty up-tempo game at home. Damian Lillard as well, getting a nice friendly matchup against Sacramento. It just kind of makes paying up for Westbrook a little bit harder with these guys kind of about a full $1,000 cheaper. So it's something to keep an eye on. Lowry, Thomas, great GPP plays tonight. Speaking of the opposing guys from that game, you're kind of looking for maybe the correlation plays of Thomas and maybe a Clipper or two. Trying to keep that thing close. And it is a 3-point spread, also one of the higher scoring totals on the night as well. Rajon Rondo, he's an interesting one. You're looking, he's in a game without Boogie. In that game against Minnesota where Boogie did not play, he scored and took 16 shots. He's only had a handful of double-digit shot attempts in the last 10 games. You don't really expect him to score 25. But in a matchup against Portland, Lillard, not really known for his defense. If he gets up there and plays 35 minutes, I like that a lot. I think he's a great GPP target. But lately, he's been really up and down. You're looking at 38 points against Dallas, just 31 against Phoenix, 23 against Chicago, 20 against New York. His numbers, if he produces like that, can be duplicated at a cheaper level, which is kind of why I'm reserving him more so for GPPs. I'd rather target Knight, Rubio from that same game against Phoenix and Minnesota. They've just been a little bit more consistent, as well as Goran Dragic. He's been a beast without Chris Bosh since he's been down. So he gets another great matchup at 6,500 on DK. He's definitely worth a look. One guy to keep an eye on, though, Shelvin Mack. Obviously, a great matchup against the Lakers. About the second most fantasy points per game to point guards this season. Mack coming off a couple down games, but you look for him to bounce back against the Lakers team. At home, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Below 6K on both sides, sitting at 5,900. You like him a lot. Kind of really hard to get away from him. I'm leaning on him more so in GPPs just because he has been a little bit inconsistent of late. And in a matchup against Minnesota, you really expected him to thrive, as well as OKC, Houston, and he kind of struggled a little bit in the last three. But I'll be looking at him to bounce back, especially at that price tag, one of the better points per dollar point guards on the night. Looking even cheaper, Manuel Mudiay, been really up and down as far as minutes go, but mostly in the 20s, hasn't been producing entirely well. Definitely going to reserve him for GPPs just because of the upside still there. We saw it against Philly. If he's shooting the ball well, he's going to be playing. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, it's been really DJ Augustine who's taking over minutes, taking it away from him. They played alongside a little bit, but Augustine's kind of the guy I want as a safer play in that backcourt of Denver. As well as even bringing some upside recently. We saw that last game with an 18-2-10 game, played 34 minutes. He's been the guy who's been consistently above 25 minutes over the last really 10 games or so, playing right around 27 per game. So I like him a lot, really. And then Tony Douglas, Fraser, if Holiday and Cole both sit, Bray, you got all those options down low. One guy to kind of keep an eye on that's a little bit sneaky is Jose Calderon. I mean, really his two games came against Chicago, back-to-back 30 games against them. But he has been up in good matchups. He played Phoenix a couple games ago, put up 36. A nice matchup against New Orleans at that cheap price tag, kind of a stars and scrubs approach if you're looking to go that route. But what can I say? Calderon does have, a decent upside for that price. So kind of a hopeful shot, but definitely worth a mention there. Looking at shooting guard, not a lot of injuries to worry about. Really none that are new. You're looking at Ginobili sitting possibly tonight with rest. That whole situation keeps going. You're also taking a look at really guys like, Wesley Matthews is taking on a bigger role with Parsons out. Saw the matchup that should have been solid against Sacramento, but just 22 points. It looked like all of Dallas had a pretty down game. But before that, back-to-back 35-plus fantasy point games. Expecting to play another heavy minutes game against Denver here tonight. 35, 33, and 41, and 42 over the last four games. You expect him to be around that 35-minute mark is a pretty solid average. Zach LaVine, Andrew Wiggins, of course, if you're looking on FanDuel, Wiggins is a small forward. Both in solid spots against a Phoenix defense that lacks. Wiggins has averaged over 25 points against Phoenix in 3 games. You're really looking. All these Minnesota guys are coming off a down game against Utah. I fully expect them to bounce back tonight against Phoenix. Nice 112 total to target. Wiggins and LaVine definitely both in play. Same from that same game, Devin Booker. The guy's usage is through the roof. Even when he's not being extremely efficient as he was against Boston, he was only 8 of 20 from the field. Still put up 21, 4, and 4 with the steal. The guy's got a nice cash game floor, but he also has the upside, as we've seen a couple 40-plus fantasy point games in the last 10 there. Like him in this matchup. I expect this to be kind of the top game to really target tonight. CJ McCollum, he's another one, 7,200 on DK. Like him a lot. He's been shooting the ball lights out. Over the last 6 games, 4 of them have gone for 40-plus fantasy points. Playing heavy minutes again after a stretch where he was really only seeing below 30. Golden State 26, 29, Orlando 29, OKC. But over the last 4, there 34, 37, 37, and 43. Been shooting the ball really well, been adding some nice peripheral stats. 8 steals in the last 2 games. That's something that's kind of unsustainable. But if he can chip in a couple 2 to 3 range, I like it a lot, especially with the assists being up 5, 6, 4, and 8 over the last 4. Great matchup against Sacramento. Really hard to fade him in all formats tonight. I think he's kind of your top shooting guard option. Looking up top, you get DeMar DeRozan, Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is same price as McCollum right now, and I'm easily taking McCollum over him just because Butler hasn't been the same since coming back from injury. That floor has been a little bit lower. The ceiling hasn't been there. Tougher matchup against Atlanta. They've been really strong defensively of late. And DeMar DeRozan as well. I like him in GPPs. I like the upside he brings. I like the matchup against OKC at home. They're going to be a nice playoff atmosphere, a nice playoff style game, a little bit up tempo, and both back courts and alongside Durant, it's where all the usage is. So a total like that, you can kind of focus your shift to Westbrook, Durant, Lowry, and DeRozan. So those are certainly guys to keep an eye on. Going a little bit lower, back down. You're looking at guys like Bojan Bogdanovic, who's just still been really solid. Right around 25 fantasy points per game. Tougher matchup against Miami tonight, but the guy's been decent. You're looking at putting up 25 against Indiana, 28 against Detroit. So he's kind of been in that range, 25 against Toronto, regardless of the matchup. Still not going to probably be looking at him at 5K. I think that's a little too steep. I think you can get a little bit cheaper. Like Jamal Crawford, who's been playing well off the bench. They're going to need his scoring tonight against Boston. A little bit cheaper. Same with Raymond Felton. Josh Richardson, he's a guy to keep an eye on. Been over 30 minutes in 3 of the last 4 games there. I like him a lot. I like his upside that he brings. A little bit more of a GPP play, but I don't feel bad about him in cash just because he's going for so cheap against Brooklyn tonight. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Small forward, you got pretty top-heavy options as far as Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony goes. Carmelo Anthony, kind of a better points per dollar playing cash. Kind of takes Durant off the table for me there. I do like Durant GPPs just because he brings that high ceiling to the table. You're looking at what he did against Toronto earlier this season, 27, 7, and 4 with 3 blocks and 2 steals, over 50 fantasy points. Definitely has that upside again tonight. I think you push it even higher. As far as Melo goes, you're taking a nice $2,000 discount. He's been averaging 40 fantasy points over the last 4 games there. Nice matchup against New Orleans, who have really struggled. Melo's been playing heavy minutes, which I like. It's something that you don't see too often from him, but it really has been over the second half of the season here. So an away matchup against New Orleans, not too frightening at all. Carmelo, 8,300. I think he comes in as your better points per dollar play. Same with Gordon Hayward low. I think those are your safe cash game options. And Hayward, you're really looking for about 30 to 35 fantasy points out of him, which is usually what he's at most nights, and that's where he has been against LA this season in 2 games. So 19, 3, and 3, 2.5 blocks plus steals per game against LA in 2 matchups. I like that a lot. As far as other guys go, oh my God, Rudy Gay, here we go again. 26, 28 minutes over the last 2 games, hasn't been there really as far as minutes go, over 35, which is a little bit concerning. He doesn't take a huge jump when Cousins sits out, who's doubtful tonight, so it's not going to be a play that I'm really worth looking at, especially in cash on a full slate. If you want to take the run in GPPs going up against Portland, if you see some Aminu, I don't like the matchup one bit. If he shifts over to the 4, I don't mind it, but that's something to keep an eye on. Still, that price tag, it makes him a little bit more intriguing. I'm limiting it to GPPs, and I think there is a pretty heavy risk with him, even with Cousins out. Luol Deng, I think he's your safer option for just a couple hundred cheaper going up against Brooklyn's front court that struggles. Gay needs some rest, came back, played strong against Orlando, another double-double with 5 assists. Like the matchup here against Brooklyn. They're in the bottom half in rebounding. They struggle against power forwards. Deng's price has come down just a little bit. The guy had a really hot stretch there. He seemed to be over 35 fantasy points for most nights, and then took a little bit of a hit. Maybe just was tired. But I like for him in a home matchup against Brooklyn to bounce back and definitely hit over value at just 5,800. Looking cheaper, there's not a lot to like. You're looking at if Tyson Chandler and John Lure are out tonight, versus Teletovic, 4,700. With both of them out last game, 17, 9, and 2 with 2 steals, played 32 minutes. Other than that, he's been in about the 25 to 26 minute range, over 20 fantasy points in the last 3 games before that Boston game. Still, though, a little bit lower floor than desired. The minutes haven't been as consistent, so that's something that's kind of more reserved for GPPs. But if the injury news comes out that Phoenix is sitting some guys, give a look his way. Outside of that, Jeff Green, I mean, the guy's been a little bit up and down. Once again, over 25 fantasy points in 2 of the last 4 games, but those other games, 11 and 16, you're looking at right around 25 minutes to 30 as far as where he's going to land tonight. A matchup against Boston, definitely worth a look. He was just 2 of 11 in 31 minutes last time out. Didn't produce much. Look for that to change. You're looking at LA's, total tonight. It's pretty high against Boston at home, and Green. I'm really looking at him to be a part of that. Another guy who just keeps flying under the radar is Thabo Sefolosha. 3,900, 26, 21, 23, 33, 23 over the last 6 games. The minutes have been really consistent, right around 25 minutes. Shooting efficient from the field, 62%, 50% from 3. Also nabs nearly 2, a steal and a half per game there. Kind of just does it all across the board. He's not really an elite scorer off the bench, just produces. Chicago's been one of the poor defensive teams of late, really over the course of the season, but it's been really bad lately. So definitely him to keep an eye on. I just like that matchup for him. I think he's going to produce pretty well. Looking over at power forwards tonight, as you mentioned, Marcus Cousins out. Most likely he is doubtful. There's some talks about him shutting it down for the season. Need some foot stuff in the off season there. You're going to see Costa Kufos pick up a bigger role. Willie Cauley-Stein likely pick up some more minutes. Rajon Rondo, Rudy Gay, Darren Collison, all kind of going to take an uptick in offensive responsibility. So I don't mind that there. Really, all those 4 guys. Cauley-Stein a little bit more riskier. Kufos I don't mind in cash at that price tag. Kufos has been, pretty solid when Cousins is out this season at pretty much a bare minimum price tag. Definitely worth a look. So he went 15 and 15 that Minnesota game when he sat out. You're looking before 24 minutes against Orlando, 19-4, 2 blocks. He's going to come in and probably put up around 25 fantasy points, and he does have an upside over 30, especially in this matchup against Portland. So definitely like him a lot. I mean, really outside of the other guys, you had Davis who's already ruled out, Blake Griffin ruled out, Millsap, questionable, suffered a laceration on his head. So it's not really an injury. It's just more of a medical concern there, coming off a monster game against Detroit. If he doesn't play, you're looking at Al Horford picking up some responsibility down low. You're also looking at some of the wing guys coming off the bench to put up some more offensive usage. So Millsap's kind of a guy to keep an eye on just because you are targeting a weak Chicago front court defense. I think Horford would be really the top play there. Dirk Nowitzki, he played just 27 minutes last night against Sacramento. Not really concerned about the back-to-back here against Denver's front court. 14-5, that was kind of his first down game in a while. As far as Dallas goes, he just looked awful. Look for them to bounce back tonight against Denver. Also, I just like Dirk at that price still. I mean, he's been producing great, especially with the lack of top-end options. I see him more as a GPP play because I think LaMarcus Aldridge just seems to be the safer option. But Aldridge's usage with Kawhi out, who's questionable, he just kind of justifies as possibly the top power forward option of the night there. Looking a little bit cheaper, you got guys like Derek Favors. I like him in GPPs. I think I'm going to be targeting some other Utah options, even though it is a great matchup for Favors. You look at the Lakers, they're ranked 27th in rebounding, struggle defensively against all 5 spots. But I'm thinking I'm looking at a little cheaper guys like Shelvin Mack, Gordon Hayward, and at a weaker small forward spot. So Favors going to be on my radar a little bit, but I won't have too much exposure to him tonight. Going cheaper, Thaddeus Young, tough matchup, hasn't been producing great, 18, 22, 18 over the last 3 games. 2 tougher matchups, and the matchup against Charlotte, that was kind of a letdown. He might be burned out towards the end of the season here. Tough matchup against Miami, kind of a fade for me. Porzingis, he's a guy I definitely take a look at tonight. The minutes have been super heavy of like 41, 35, 31, 35, 39 over the last 5 games there. And in that span, 28 and 1, 1.6 blocks per game, shooting 48% from the field. That price is yet to catch up, and I doubt it will anytime soon. Definitely look at Porzingis against this depleted New Orleans front court, especially at those prices. Gorjai Dang, he's kind of an interesting play tonight. I mean, he's been really solid outside that Utah game. I like the upside he brings. Definitely has over 40 fantasy point upside, as we've seen 3 times in the last 10 games. I mean, really, with that dud mixed in, he's averaging 12 and 8 and 3 with 3.0 blocks plus steals per game in the last 5, right around 34 minutes per game. And I like him as a cheap, points per dollar play tonight with exposure against that Phoenix defense, who've struggled rebounding of late. Defensively, they're not good. They push the pace, and just looking at Deng, I mean, $6,000 on DK just seems reasonably cheap for him in the matchup against Phoenix. So I like him a lot. A couple other guys to look at. David Lee in tournaments definitely has big time upside against his Denver front court. He's a high fantasy points per minute player. You're looking 12 and 6-2 in 14 minutes against Sacramento. 24 minutes, went for 33 DK points. So if he gets around that range against his team, he definitely will reach that there. And outside of that, there's not a lot of guys lower than I like. You can look at Mirotic again in GPPs. Kind of hoping for that upside if he gets hot off the bench. But outside of that, been right around the 20, 24-minute mark. Not really looking any other way. Ed Davis, he's another one. Really consistent of late. 31-30, 34, 23-30 over the last 5 games. Love the matchup for him against Sacramento. He's averaged 11-4-1 in the game against Sacramento earlier this season. Last 6 games, 21 minutes per game. Shooting 66% from the field. He's always been efficient that way, averaging 9 and 9. Also defensive guy, 3.0 blocks plus steals per game in a matchup against Sacramento, who do rank in the bottom 3 in turnovers. So definitely looking his way, and he's probably about as low as I'll go at power forward tonight. A lot of center options to take a look at. You're looking at Karl-Anthony Towns, Hassan Whiteside, DeAndre Jordan, all as your top options. Pau Gasol still coming off an issue with the injury with the leg. The minutes limit 25, 25, and 25 over the last 3 games there. And in this matchup, if he was getting full minutes, you'd like it a lot against Atlanta because they struggle rebounding. They struggle against centers. But under 25 minutes, that kind of takes Gasol off the table for me. That's something to keep an eye on. DeAndre Jordan, though, he's my favorite option of the night. You're looking at Boston. They rank in the bottom half in rebounding. Struggle against centers. Towns as well. He's the high usage guy of that group there. Has struggled against Phoenix this season, but I mean the way the guy's producing, put up 38 DK points against a tough Utah front court. Outside that, I mean he's been well over 30 over the last 10 games and over into the 40s most nights. So I think he's a pretty safe play. Whiteside as well. I mean he's coming off a monster game against Orlando, 26 and 12 with 5 blocks. They had no answer for him. Brooklyn's absolutely disgraceful against centers this season. They rank in the bottom half against ranking in the bottom half in rebounding. Over 2 games this season, Whiteside has averaged 19 and 12 with 3 blocks per game on 2 meetings against Brooklyn. I mean, the good thing is if Miami blows him out, Whiteside kind of usually hits his value in about 25 minutes anyway, and anything more is upside. And I do think you can target him for GPPs because he can bring it, as we saw against Orlando, even in under 30 minutes. I mentioned Horford being a cheaper play. Take a look at it. I like him a lot against Chicago. And he's absolutely dominated them this season, as many centers have, 22, 6, and 4, shooting 70% from the field in those 3 games. I like him a lot. You're looking guys cheaper. Alex Len's been really bad of late. He's kind of streaky. In 2 games against Minnesota this season, 25 minutes, he's averaged 29 DK points. I'm not really targeting him. I just think there's plenty of other safer guys that go down low. Rudy Gay, he's a guy to keep an eye on against a weak Lakers front court. Sorry, not Rudy Gay. Rudy Gobert, 14 and 11 in 2 games against the Lakers. He's only taken 11 shots in that span. So, I mean, you're not looking for a ton of offense, but you're looking at the rebounding. Should get up a ton. He's averaged 4 blocks in 2 games against them this season. So, pretty cheap price tag. Robin Lopez, he's another one. I'm definitely reserving those 2 for GPPs because they definitely have monster upside for such a cheap price. And I'm going to lump Jared Sullinger into that span as well against the Clippers. So really all 3 of those guys are super cheap. They have great matchups, but definitely minutes and kind of the floor is a lot lower than desired at times. So definitely reserve them for your tournaments. That's going to wrap things up here with the Mints to Win It. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all great tools and content.